Representative! That's me, into a phone, trying to talk to a human when I have a customer service issue. But instead, I'm only getting canned responses. So how do we get a human on the line when we really need one? Or do we need one? We're gonna get to the bottom of it today on AI in Action. In this series, we explore what generative AI can and can't do, how it actually gets built, responsible ways to put it into practice, and the real-world business problems and solutions we'll encounter along the way. So, welcome to AI in Action, brought to you by IBM. I'm Albert Lawrence. So let's talk about virtual customer service agents and how to actually get help. Today I'm joined by Jeannie Walters, customer experience speaker, trainer, and podcast host. Jeannie, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're gonna have a good time. My other guest is Morgan Carroll, senior AI engineer at IBM. What's up, Morgan?
I am jazzed to be here.
Oh, I know you are. I feel it. Now look, I know you both are wondering, why did I choose you two for today's episode? Well, it's because you both specialize in the future of customer service and virtual agent experiences. Big picture, I want to explore trust. Is it time for us to give virtual agents a chance? Can they really be empathetic, personal, timely, and answer the questions that we actually have? I know we're asking for a lot, but Jeannie, what do you think?
I think it's time. Customers are expecting this. They want to be seen and recognized for who they are and where they are on the journey, however they interact with our brands. And so now we have a chance to do that in a way that is automated and personal and all of those things, but we have to consider the entire journey at the same time.
I think it all comes back to trust. We want to make sure that users know that the data that they're giving and receiving is accurate and secure. If they are interacting with an artificial intelligence agent versus a human, we should let them know that so that they don't think like, okay, this is a live human. No, this is artificial intelligence that is assisting us.
Now, Morgan, you mentioned that it's important for humans to understand when they're speaking with a virtual assistant versus another human. Jeannie, why might that be the case? Can you give me an example?
We have heard over and over that customers really don't like it. And it's not just customers, it's all of us, right? We don't like to be deceived as humans. And so it can feel very deceptive when we think we're having this very human conversation, and then suddenly it basically says, beep boop, I can't do it. And we realize that it's actually not a human. That is breaking trust from the beginning, instead of just being open and honest about the fact that, you know, you're talking to a virtual agent who's here to help you. People are very open to that.
Well, when I am talking with a virtual agent, then I guess one of my concerns is that I want to make sure that the answers that I'm given are not just broad, generic answers. I would prefer for them to actually be answers that pertain specifically to my questions, that address my needs. How do you bridge that gap with generative AI?
So we're going to connect to different data sources. Generative AI is going to take all of those different sources and sort of make an experience that is unique to the user without the user having to actually, press 0, go to a live agent, have the live agent look at their information. But generative AI can do that.
I think one of the powers of Gen AI that we're seeing is that, for instance, in a contact center, if somebody calls in, suddenly that agent has the information, just like you're talking about, Morgan, at their fingertips. There are places still today where agents have to pull out big binders and try to find the information based on the information that they happen to get on the phone call. And we're really seeing how we're connecting all that data in the back end to make it easier for the people who serve the customers. And customers really are responding to that very positively.
You just painted this picture of like humans pulling binders, and that feels kind of archaic, but I guess it's still happening.
It's still happening because we don't all have the capability to put the data in one place. And that's what's so powerful about what Gen AI can do. It can connect some of these different systems on the back end so we can actually provide a better front end for the customer.
Okay, so I want to get into some of that back end discussion then too. Now, Morgan, I'm very curious, how do you end up really building that personalized generative AI solution then? Can you take us through that system?
Yeah, so we want to keep the customer in mind first and foremost, put ourselves in their shoes and think, okay, how should this conversation go that's going to be efficient and get straight to what they need? So the first thing we do is sort of build like an outline of a dialogue, just like a skeleton, like, okay, this is where we want to start maybe, and this is where we want to end. And then we're going to come in and add all these different integrations. So maybe a database that has all the customer information. So when they call in, it's like, hi, Morgan. And, it's already got all my information. Nobody has to pull out a binder and like search through all this stuff. And it just makes it very simple.
So now that we've had a chance to talk some about the technical and engineering aspect and also really the front-facing customer service aspect, how are these two things going to come together?
Yeah, so we want to think about the customer experience overall from beginning to end. Let's say we have someone who they need to get in touch with HR because they're about to go on maternity leave. Well, HR only has 5 different options to select from, and this doesn't fall into any of those categories. What do? Obviously, we're 0-0 representative. We want to talk to a live person. So these are the things that we have to consider, and this is something that generative AI can help us with.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just say, think about the overall kind of strategy and needs of both the brand and organization and the customer that you're serving. So, for example, when email came out, we got very excited about email and we sent all these emails, and now we're kind of like, we're done with email, right? And so I think we have to think strategically about how to best serve people. And when we're talking about the customer journey, customers want choice. You and I might not want to go through the same journey. You might have different needs than I do as far as if I'm in the car, I might want to call and talk to a person when that is happening. So providing those options for people, even though it might be more efficient on our end to use the virtual agent, can we give those choices along the way to the customer as well?
Different customers might have different preferences regarding how they would like to be helped. What are some of those preferences like?
Well, I mean, think about the different circumstances that we go through in our daily lives. I kind of get a chuckle when people say things like, well, our digital customer journey is this, and, our in-person journey is this, because sometimes we go into a store, sometimes we want to shop digitally, sometimes we might prefer a virtual agent in a chat, and sometimes we might need to talk to somebody and call them right away, and we don't necessarily fit into the boxes that they give us. So that customer choice of how to be served and helped is just super, super important.
So I'd like to pivot to the agent experience. They're obviously inundated with a number of emails, and there's plenty that virtual assistants can automatically respond to. But if they have perhaps something more difficult, they're getting a lot of these emails per day and they have to respond to these, generative AI can actually assist them. It's not going to necessarily respond for them. It could, but in this case, we're thinking about how can we make the customer service agent's job easier, and generative AI can help them draft an email or look up information, stuff like that.
So even if a customer isn't speaking directly to a virtual agent, generative AI is still playing a role with the human-to-human contact.
Exactly.
But then it makes me think about this idea of being a proactive versus reactive. Why is that important to the entire process, and how might a customer feel and experience that on the front end?
Well, when you get right down to it, if somebody is contacting customer service, something has probably gone wrong already. So yes, we want those moments to be efficient and effective, but we also want to prevent those moments from happening because it will reduce cost for the brand and everybody else, but it also makes the customer feel more valued and cared for. So if we can predict, for instance, based on data, and AI can look for patterns really well. So maybe AI notices, a lot of customers are returning this product after 3 months. What's going on? And then we can figure out, well, it's breaking after 3 months. That's not great. So let's figure out what is actually going on and proactively prevent that from happening, or proactively reach out to the customer and say, we think this might happen in 3 months. Here's a proactive solution for you. That makes people feel really kind of recognized and seen in a way that when they have to call in, when the onus is on the customer to really solve their problem, they don't feel valued as much.
Well, Morgan, I know we've been talking about the customer service experience, but how exactly is an engineer helping to transform and to build the customer service experience?
Okay, so this is exactly what I do every day. Think back in the day when you would call a customer service line and you only have, your 5 options, whatever, you have to push 1, 2, 3, and that's all you can do. Now we can actually use generative AI to take what the user is saying. So actually I'm going to break it down on a sort of like a technical level. We have our dialogue flow here, right? And then we have the user saying like, I need help with this particular thing. Well, if it's not sort of hard coded into our answers, we can actually call out to a large language model with some of that information and say like, hey, we need you to provide an answer to this user. And just it's directly connected to the virtual assistant. So we get that data back and then we just pass it right along to the user.
And that works?
Most of the time. This is why we have guardrails built into our virtual assistants, because obviously all of this is really, really new. And in my experience, in building these assistants, sometimes we do get a wrong answer, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So we have various tools that basically if a customer asks a question and we're not really, really sure that it's correct, then we may just say something like, I'm sorry, I can't help with that. And that's when we need a live person.
Well, and this is why it all comes back to transparency and building that trust so that we're not presenting something that isn't quite truthful to the customer. They know the entire time that they're dealing with a virtual agent, and that, you know what, sometimes there are places where we need to introduce a human.
Jumping back into the mindset of being a customer, right? And if I call on into a virtual agent, I'm wondering, what are some of the common questions that I probably will be asking as a customer that a virtual agent can actually understand and give me valuable information about?
Well, I think right now, this is probably the best use of virtual agents are these kind of repetitive, very standard questions that customers ask. So think about when you're at a hotel, some of the questions you might have for the front desk. Where are the pool towels? How do I get a wake-up call? What do I do about, these automatic drapes aren't working or whatever? And once you start seeing those patterns, that's something that a virtual system could handle very, very easily. A virtual chat, something that maybe is accessible right in the moment. Then on the flip side of that, these big, nuanced, complicated things that we run into as humans, sometimes we need humans, and we need both that empathy that a human can give and also just understanding, this isn't the standard question. This is about something that went wrong, that doesn't go wrong a lot. We have to figure this out. The customer is very upset. So once we get to that place, then we're going to start seeing new patterns, and we're going to start realizing different ways that we can maybe update customers. If they've already talked to a human and said, this is going wrong, maybe there's an automation through the virtual agent that says, hey, I'm your virtual agent. I just want you to know we're working on this. Here's what to do next. Here's when you can expect to hear from us. Because that's another thing customers want, is just that proactive communication of, we heard you and we're working on it.
Well, I heard you say automatic drapes, and now I want for my next hotel room to have those. But I'm also thinking, you gave me some great ideas in terms of, in the future, what are some ways that a virtual agent might be able to help, and what are some of the common questions that customers might be calling on in from. Morgan, do you happen to have any thoughts in terms of some questions that you are anticipating for customers to be calling in for?
Definitely. What are your hours? What time do you open? What's your phone number? What is your address? Things like that. Just simple, again, repetitive tasks. But I actually have a good example of one that we do need a human for. And this happened to me yesterday. I got to my hotel and there was no electricity. So the hotel actually does. They do have a virtual assistant in their app, but obviously that's not really going to be useful if there's no electricity. So go to the front. And that's a really, really simple example, but these things happen.
In the future, and now you've got me stuck on this hotel situation, both of you, do you think that we'll be able to speak to a virtual assistant and just say, open up the curtains?
That's happening in some hotels already. They have smart speakers, they have tablets in the room, they have all sorts of ways that we can interact. And I think the other side of this that maybe we have to start thinking about as well is, how do we take care of those humans now who are dealing with these big complex issues all the time? Because in some ways, these repetitive things, they don't take as much empathy, they don't take as much brain power and compassion. So they're kind of like a little breather between these big complex things. I think we really have to think about the world where we get to, where we're asking humans to just carry a big heavy lift for every single thing that they do, and look for ways to take care of them.
Well, let's stay on this train of thought as we're thinking about this world where humans don't need to do that. Why can't we do that right now? What's holding businesses back from us getting into Jeannie's ideal future?
We're kind of already there. We have a concept called Agent Assist. So our agents, again, we don't want them to have to search through the binder. They actually may have their own virtual assistant to help them with these complex customer inquiries. So, customer calls in, hotel, my drapes aren't working and the TV is broken and there's no water. Well, a virtual assistant probably could handle that, but I think we're going to want a live person. So they're like, all right, let's look up the information. We got to call the water company, an electrician, et cetera, et cetera. And they have this virtual agent that can help.
And hopefully just put me in a new room.
Yeah.
Because at that
At the
point.
very least.
At the very least. Wow. Okay. So then that raises another concern for me, which is data privacy and sharing. So how do you reconcile that, right? Like, how does data privacy and sharing end up impacting the personalization that can also make a customer feel really valued?
Right. So obviously we don't want someone stealing our credit card number, but it all comes down to, do we trust the model that we're using? We have to make sure that we're open and transparent. How is this model being trained? Where is the data? Where is my data going? Is it secure? So let's think of a client. We have client information over here, and then we have our virtual assistant up here in the cloud. We're not actually storing the data in the cloud. It is secure in the customer's environment. We're only sending and receiving the data that we need in order to have the conversation flow versus just, here's my credit card number, let's just send everything over.
I think we're at the cusp of a really interesting time around this whole conversation around data privacy and protection, because for years we've been talking about the fact that you can have a more personalized experience the more data that a brand knows about you. That's why we get suggested purchases. That's why we are told when, hey, that product you ordered might be running out. You might want to order it again. That's all data driven. But I think now consumers and customers in general are becoming savvier about what that means. So I want to give them more control. I want to see a world where we can have a dashboard where people can say, yes, you can use my data this way, and this way. And it's all integrated into their experience from the beginning, and they have more control and like visibility into how it's being used.
I like this. Like, I want to sign up for that, like right now, for that future. But I got to imagine, though, that there must be some sort of like difficulties with scaling to that. Like, are there any difficulties within that? And if so, what does that look like?
Let's say you have your virtual assistant and it's running on a server. You maybe, let's say for simplicity's sake, one copy. What if you have, let's say, 20 people trying to interact at the same time? Well, since it's running in the cloud, it can actually handle multiple transactions. If we need, say like suddenly there's an outage, like it's an electricity company, we've got 500 customers calling. Since it's in the cloud, it can automatically scale. So we have more instances of this assistant to handle more people.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. But, I have to ask, what if it goes wrong? What can go wrong?
Oh, so many things. Tornadoes, being from Texas, what if a tornado comes through and takes out our data center? Well, that's why we have multiple data centers. We're going to have all of our data backed up, redundancy in various places.
So what I'm getting now is you both shared so much today, but for my brain, I'm trying to process them. So I've got a few key takeaways that I'm going to take a stab at. Okay, keep customers in mind as you start your build, because this is customer service after all. It's important for humans to feel valued and seen in their requests, even if it's not another human that you're speaking with on the other end. And we don't like to be deceived, so be transparent with your customers. If it's a virtual agent, it's okay. Just let me know. I'm talking with the virtual agent. Is that good?
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Perfect.
I love positive validation. Jeannie, Morgan, thank you so much for being here today. You've got brain cells all percolating right now. This is a fantastic conversation. That's it for this episode. So thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for watching. But worry not, there are a ton more great things where this came from, and we will see you here again soon.